Revere. All right, я думаю, I think we're live. Yes, we are now live. Yes, awesome. Ми дамо тривога у Львові якраз тепер. How about that for a beginning? So, we're gonna give the whole system a minute or two, бо то є перший раз, що ми робимо напряму з Facebook. Okay, good. But I'm getting the okay, що нас чують. Олексій, дай знати тут на телефоні, чи нас чути. I hope so. I am going to take a minute зараз тепер and just repost it so people who follow me on Facebook personally can find us.
Ready too.
She's ready? All right, good. All right, give me a second. Grab your breath. And
Let
yes.
her know, please, that we're friends. Like Razum is like
We're live.
cueing her a little bit that we've been
All right.
working together for a bit, and it's a big Ukrainian.
Joining
So
now.
with Razum.
Yeah.
Okay, super. We're live. So, all right. So I've just reposted it on my page. Hopefully, your team will repost it on your band's page, and then
Yeah.
more people will be able to hear our conversation. So, вітаю всіх. Я є Дора Хомяк, президент Разом. Тут в Нью-Йорку. Шалено рада, що коло мене є Євген Гудзь, головний співак гурту Gogol Bordello, of which I've been a fan for years. And I'm really glad to be able to grab some time here in the East Village with you today. Right as you
також.
step off a plane, що
Yeah.
можна на ти, та? Та
Yeah,
ми
of
вже
course.
уточнили це. Що ти менше
Можна.
як 24 години тому
Yeah, like 30
повернувся.
годин, yeah.
30 годин тому повернувся до Нью-Йорку. Може почнемо з того. Where were you?
In Ukraine. Ми були на Україні з нашим гуртом. Well, нас попросили не обов'язково розказувати про всі локації.
Абсолютно.
І ми мали такий основний план, про який це був такий музично-енергічний, енергопідйомний план.
Ага.
Yeah. Але ми також змогли відвідати some refugee hubs in the areas, також побачити з кількома друзями.
I saw some of your posts on Instagram that you visited sort of some communities of first responders and defenders, and
Yeah,
visited
yeah.
some refugee communities. Let me ask you some basic questions first. When was the last time you were in Ukraine prior to this trip? Because
It
it's a
was,
country that changes so much.
Well, it was 3 years ago. We played Захід Fest, which is my favorite festival in Ukraine. It's always fantastically well organized, and lineups are pretty punchy, you know. So, yeah, that was in August 19, you know, so 3 years ago.
So 3 years, COVID and all that, and then you came.
Yeah.
You came and visited. Tell me what, because I was in Ukraine a month ago, and there were a couple things that surprised me.
Mhm.
Did you find, what is the, are you ready to say what you found there that you didn't expect to find?
Not really. I mean, I know Ukraine pretty well, and you know, I also have pretty, you know, a lot of my specific attachments to particular pockets of Ukrainian culture. So, you know, it's what I found that is maybe surprising for other people, not for me. You know, things like that. You know, Ukrainian people are very stoic in a lot of ways, and they don't get you know, shattered so easily. Like, so you know, I found a lot of perseverance and strength, and that nobody's really wobbling. I mean, it's somehow like on Ukrainian cultural hard drive, that kind of very resilient vibe. And you know, people who were traveling along with me are finding kind of surprising how, you know, composed, you know, the military people and civilians and, you know, transplants are. You know, once we got into refugee shelters, you know, people there were, I mean, they were going through, obviously they're going through a tragic experience, and it's tumultuous, but they're not trying to make it more tragic or, you know, while in it. They were pretty ready to snap out of it and give it a, you know, look at it in another way. Look at it that, you know, how hard are we gonna party after the victory, you know, because nobody parties harder than Ukrainians.
That's right.
You know, that's the vibe.
Uh-huh. I love putting it that way. Were you able to actually perform in some of these
Oh, yes.
refugee?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of, you know, my main export, you know, so performance and kind of uplift, and that's kind of what we do as a band. And it was amazing to go in a shelter and with an organizer, with a guide, for example, Eleonora Lola, who runs this Romani shelter in the West Ukraine, to see, you know, how complex their like operation actually is. They're covering a lot of different, you know, levels of life while in a shelter. They have their kitchen, they have school. She will be like, and here's where we do art therapy for children, you know. And so it's like, yeah, that's a very that's how you handle it, you know. You don't forget about this, you know, of course necessities is the first, and when you're in such a drastic situation, but they also very well remember that, you know, healing, you know, trauma at the moment, it is very important. They're not waiting for it to, you know, for years to come to deal with it. They're already on top of it, and they have rooms set up. There's tons of drawings and art made by children. It's really great to see that people are being proactive in a positive way, like salvaging the situation, you know.
Where are most of the people from in that shelter? Were they all from one geographic region? Or like, did they know each other before they wound up in the shelter, or no?
From all different parts. And it's not unlike, like, you know, when I was in immigration, it was similar to, you just kind of get crammed into one, you know, say motel that's kind of super on the outskirts somewhere, and you end up staying with like a family of in one room. You know, there's a bunch of bunk beds and a room that's essentially for 2 people or for 3 people. There'll be like 6 people there, you know, 2 families. Or sometimes you'll get put in for a while with like a family of like religious fanatics, you know, from like some sect, you know.
Wait,
that you never heard about.
Are you talking about your own experience?
Yes,
now?
I'm talking about my own
So
experience,
when was that? Yeah.
That was back in 89 and 90.
Okay.
But this is similar, except that, you know, here everybody is more on the same page because it is war, and you know, people might be from different areas, but the vibe there was very, you know, coexisting and cooperative, and there was a lot of Romani families from all over Ukraine.
Did you share your own experiences with? Did you have a chance
Yeah,
to
we
share
talked
your own
live there
experience?
for a bit. I mean, the whole idea of going there. I mean, I said, of course, playing music is our main thing,
Right.
but you know.
But your own personal experience of being dislocated like that, and then
Yeah. I mean,
thrown in
but I
with
think
some
that that's
people
kind of why I have a certain urge to go and speak and connect there, because I have a version of that experience,
Right.
and my message is that that's not the end, and it's a kind of rough cut. It's a, you know, but there is a whole other chapter of life which people completely, you know, can look forward to.
Just not written yet.
And it will come.
Yeah.
And it will come, and it will be great. It's yeah, in that way, I feel like I can speak like, you know, from experience and talk live, you know, with them
And be like, look at you
in
now.
a
and you
promising
were
way.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the whole history of Ukrainian immigration is kind of mind blowing.
It really is.
It's not kind of mind blowing.
It is
it's
mind-blowing.
absolutely mind blowing, and it's not very well known and talked about. I mean, I always was very interested in how, in the whole phenomena of Ukrainian diaspora and other diasporas across the world. How do people just transplant and then bring their whole vibe to like completely different continents? And I've seen it in Brazil and Argentina and Australia. There's a lot of everywhere we went as a band, there would be Ukrainian people coming backstage, you know, and vyshyvankas, and you know, and bringing food and something that they locally prepared, which is of Ukrainian origin.
Yes, it's like this amazing global secret network that is actually
Exactly.
connected and now really mobilized and made visible in different ways. And I think it's really cool. Could you talk about the Romani people specifically? Like, what's your connection and interest, and sort of I can see a way in that you have with the displaced persons experience. But can you talk a little bit more about that community and your connection to it?
Well, our connection is simple. It's through our bloodline, you know, on my mother's side, and I always found it to be a very exciting part of our family history, and you know, and our new generation of you know, all my cousins and nephews that are coming up now, you know, they pretty much, most of them took to music, and
Really?
oh yes. They in fact, my cousin who was, you know, my двоюродний брат, він є great trumpet player, you know, jazz, Dixieland. He lives in Kiev. And you know, when the whole Gypsy Balkan sonic revolution happened, he completely took to it, and you know, we like rebonded on that level. And then now his daughters are taken to music, and I mean, actually they're already pretty successful in what they do, and they think that that's also a very exciting part of our family, so they track it down and they get into folklore of it, you know. So, you know, it's a huge part of like Ukrainian, you know, the wider picture of Ukrainian identity is that it is multinational, kind of Rubik's Cube, you know.
Right, so textured and so rich, and all these different patchy and flavors. Yeah,
absolutely. And I always loved that, how powerful that is, and how it's like actually enriched the world. But you know, the specificness of Ukrainians is that they're, in my personal opinion, are a bit too humble. Like, that's what happens. Like, people are like, well, who are famous Ukrainians, you know, tell me. I'm like,
this guy right here.
I'm like, well, you know, shall we start with, you know, Nudi Cohen, you know, a guy from Kiev who came here in the 30s and ended up like dressing Elvis Presley and Elton John and Dolly Parton, like because of that kind of, you know, humbleness, you know, that remains to be deeply under the radar. Or the whole, you know, Andy Warhol thing, you know, being Lemko.
So, you know, to that point earlier today,
Gretzky, you know,
Right.
the tons. I'm not even like, I don't have the list, because it's like, you can
keeps
just sit and
going.
it keeps going.
But I earlier today was talking to a group of students from Ukraine Global Scholars who are getting ready to enter top boarding schools and universities here in the United States, and they were like, sort of, was advised by someone who's in the program now, like what kind of stuff I should talk about. And one of my messages to these teenagers was, live out loud, like be Ukrainian. Don't convert everyone, because then you're like a crazy religious sect. But you don't have to boast, but live out loud. Let people know who you are, where you're from, and know that you're not going to agree with the Ukrainian sitting next to you. And that's the beauty of it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be it's not a monotone, you know, homogeneic one thing. It is this
really
kind
not.
of Rubik's Cube, like you were saying. But let people know where you're from, you know? Like, live out loud.
Absolutely. In that way, I mean, perhaps that humbleness and that is a result of trying to keep it down because of previous genocides.
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
because you got killed if you were
exactly.
too
So
much, but
some of it is that, and that's understandable.
Survival.
Similar as Romani communities, you know. Most of the time when you go in the world, like, you know, they will not really assimilate, and they will not have up front.
yeah.
You know,
You don't want to draw attention to yourself.
yeah, they
It's
really
gonna cause
don't.
you trouble.
They really don't. And in Ukraine, in the case of Ukrainians, it's a little bit more pronounced. You know, there are, you know, restaurants, but they are pretty subdued. Like, for example, I mean, I'm speaking from experience that I thought was like pretty, you know, vivid for me. It was South America. You know, there it's really like kind of under the radar, but for how much under the radar it is once you like go into restaurant and become a regular there, and they're like, oh, so like, you know, you're one of us, then you realize it's like everything around there is like a whole network of it. Exactly.
The
It's
matrix
deeply
opens up and
Ukrainian,
you
and then
suddenly see
next
it.
thing you know, you're like talking to Ukrainian celebrity, Ukrainian, you know, Ukrainian people who are celebrities in Argentina, who were like born in like Misiones, like God knows where, in like
Right.
some remote village,
But
and
totally
you
in
know,
it. Totally in it.
and now they're like celebrated people in their country, you know.
Well, but a lot of your work, I think, lives out loud and makes Ukraine more visible. And I wanted to talk a little bit about one of your newer songs that you released the video of, like last week, right? Officially.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, like, can you talk a bit about?
Which one? We've been
The-
releasing one after one.
Oh,
so
okay. No, the
Sili
one I-
Перемоги?
No, well, we can talk about Sila Перемоги. I was
Right.
thinking Візьми лише найважливіше.
Right. So, well, actually, we can talk both of them because they're
Okay.
both done in collaboration with Жадан.
Uh-huh.
Sergei Жаdan, super prominent
Shout out to Сергій Жадан.
guy. As
His birthday's today.
Oh,
it's his birthday.
Mnohé літа, Сергію.
Sergei, happy birthday, man.
Yeah.
Much more power and love to you.
Yeah.
Respect. Every day, doing great work out there. I mean, much love, much love. So, today, releasing another song in collaborate, which I don't do this where I, you know, sing lyrics, poetry of another person. It's just like,
It's not your thing.
you know, it's not my thing. But in this particular case, you know, I felt like that's the time if I'm ever gonna do it. And I found his lyrics to be kind of getting straight into bone marrow, you know.
Nice.
Yeah, it was, as far as like encapsulating experiences that are like so tumultuous, and you know, it for encapsulating such a drastic experiences like being dislocated, which I write about a lot too, but you know, I have my own feelings and metaphors about it, and I thought now is the time to kind of embrace it on yet another level through you know, eyes of a wordsmith, really, like of Serhii. And I guess the common denominator that I could feel here between his poetry and my songs is that, you know, we both try to get rid of all that like pseudo musicality and pseudo poetics that don't need to be there. It's just візьми лише найважливіше. That's very hardcore. That's very punk rock, and of course, Serhii has a, you know, track record in punk rock scene in Ukraine, and he just might gonna end up being first punk rocker worldwide nominated, you know, for Nobel Prize. And
that's such a
you know,
perfect Ukraine story.
yeah, it is. And I mean, Bob Dylan was the first musician, rock musician, you know, I believe so, right, to be nominated for literature.
Yeah, it was quite controversial. Yeah.
I think it's very deserving,
Yeah.
but I think punk rock needs to be
There.
needs to be right there. I can consider it to be probably the most important form of music of the you know, the last eras. And
Good that you're saying that here in the East Village of New York
yes,
City.
talking about punk rock, I mean, right here next door, you know, in Ukrainian National Home, right
Yeah,
about
it's right there actually.
right here.
Literally
It's-
behind this wall.
How many punk rock shows
Behind this
happen
wall,
there?
right
It's
there.
insane.
Yeah.
Like, people don't know this, but like, I'm talking about not just punk rock, like hardcore New York shows were happening like next door. This was before my time, before I got here, but once I start hearing about it, I was like,
What?
I was like,
The
what? I was like,
Ukrainian
what? But of course, oh yeah, because you know,
No.
who if not Ukrainians who love music would just like let these things happen?
Right. Just be like, sure, you seem like good people. Making
Yeah,
some
exactly.
creating
And,
stuff.
and we're talking about, you know, legendary bands
Yeah.
like New Order, you know,
Yes.
Misfits.
No, New Order's first U.S. after Joy Division.
Totally, but I think
is here.
beforehand,
and they put
I think
Taras
Mis-
Shevchenko on the cover. by the
Right,
way.
yes,
Love
that whole
Yeah.
picture. But I think
Yeah.
Misfits and a bunch of other
Oh,
bands
it's huge.
played here too.
You gotta
Yeah.
own that. But so you just shot take only what's most necessary. You shot a video of that here in New York
Yeah.
with the lead singer of Casca.
Yeah.
And just a really powerful video. It's on the Gogo Bordello YouTube site. Give
Yeah,
it a
and with the
shout out
help
right
of
now.
Razum, because you know it was all Ukrainian effort, and people were acting on a very fast accord.
Came together in less than a week, right, or something? Oh, it felt like it.
Well, I think less than, somewhere around 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody really chimed in and represented, you know, the thing. I mean, the video was shot in like in hours.
Really, I was wondering how many takes it was, because it's so when you'll see it, what you'll see there is Євген and the lead singer of Casca, Sasha, and a bunch of people that if you go to protests and rallies in New
You will
York,
see some
you'll
familiar
recognize.
faces.
And I'm gonna be very American here and not Ukrainian and toot the horn of Razum, because I think this is what we do really well. Is just be a platform where people can find each other and
Right.
create, right? So like you're in town, Sasha's in town, we can shoot a
Yeah,
video.
yeah. I mean, the introduction was done through Maria.
Maria Genkin,
Yeah,
who's sitting
yeah.
across the room right now. And it's making those connections.
Respect.
Yeah, pop into the shot here. Maria Genkin entering. Corina Lvivianka, Maria Genkin, making the
everyone.
connections.
Всім привіт.
Making the
Respectus
connections.
Maximus.
Yeah, and this is the kind of stuff to create, and now it's out there in the world, and with such a powerful message, and the finish point of like, hey, stay with Ukraine. This is what happened, and
Yeah.
and we've talked about this a little bit of the importance of making Ukraine accessible to people in different communities and in different places in different
Yeah.
ways. And so reaching like a community that listens to music. I mean, we got to give a shout out to Verjana Tkach too, who translated.
Absolutely. Well, she
that.
actually, yes, of course, she translated it and into English, and you know, I chopped it up, make it into more. I mean, you know, song has its own flow, it has its
Yeah.
own rhythm, so I kind of how do you say it?
Like remix it, kind
Tumbled it in.
of.
you know.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, it was actually, and it was. We went and recorded at Diko Shoturma's.
No way! I didn't
Yes,
realize
studio.
that.
That's what I
Shout
said.
out
It's all
to Dika.
Ukrainian.
Yeah,
It's all
Dika. Yeah, hi
Ukrainian
there.
effort
Yeah.
in
But that's like
Atlantic
that-
Sound Studios. Yeah.
But the network is there. You just
Yeah, of
have
course.
to, you know, Holositsis сказати, hey, щось конкретна пропозиція,
Oh,
let's do
we've
this one
been.
thing.
The network has been activated for decades.
Yes.
You know.
Well, so
It wa-
anyone new coming in, right? Because I was talking to these students, and they were like, "Well, how do we get involved? What do we do?" And I'm like, "Look, there's this huge global network, and you're now part of it. And you give and you get, and that's how it works."
Well, it's also time to kind of fine tune that network, because, you know, it's a bit tricky, because as you were saying before, you don't want to boast about
Yeah.
it, but you don't want to overly, but you don't want to be, you know, compromising your presence by not really not having any kind of flag
Right.
out.
It can't be totally self.
Yeah, and so the fine tuning time has come. It's now.
Yeah.
And I think the network of like great minds connecting and great organizers and great administrators and great artists, just there is a vision. There is a vision for Ukraine's proper place within world's context.
I'm so glad
you know.
you talk about it in the different kinds of skills you need, because you need the administrators, you need the managers, you need the creators, you need the
of
artists, you need all
course.
these different things, and it's about what Ukraine has to contribute to the whole world, right? And I think it's so important right now because the world needs what Ukraine has. The kind of world that I want to live in, the kind of world where the planet exists, where people respect one another, where people create and agree to disagree, and like that world.
Yeah.
Ukraine has a lot to offer how to build that. And so I'm excited to be able to do that. I'm going to give a chance to people to ask questions. We have one question in the few minutes we have left that was asked. Розкажіть про історію створення Gogol Bordello. Чому така назва? How did you come up with the name Gogol Bordello?
Okay.
Yeah, bring it.
I can do that.
What do you got?
Well, nazva is very logiczna, I thought about creating a band that's gonna reclaim Ukrainian culture in a way that is not being explained to the world, exactly what we're talking about. And I thought about a name that symbolizes all of that, which is distinctly Ukrainian, but somehow get credited to not being Ukrainian.
Okay.
And so, Mykola Gogol is the best candidate for that. It's a very respected writer worldwide, and everywhere I went, I kept hearing how he's supposedly of Russian origin, and it just kind of got on my nerves more and more and more. And when time came to name the band, it kind of shot through me that that's the story. It's like he did have to jump through some imperial hoops, and get published in Russian because Ukrainian was forbidden at the time. But it's like
it's a bit of a blocker.
Yeah, and similar with Kafka, it's a Czech writer. It's not that he wrote in German, but when you go to Munich or Berlin, you don't see murals of Kafka in airport. You see it in Prague because he's a Czech writer.
Right.
Who represents that entity, even though he wrote in German. So that whole subject is super deep, and Decolonize Your Mind, an amazing book that Maria actually sent my way. African writers dealt with that issue a lot too. And it all boils down to the factor that the language itself is not necessarily, it's an important factor in a culture, but it's not ultimate identifying factor. And there's a lot of people who can be still speaking in Russian, but who identify as hardcore Ukrainians, In that book, Decolonize Your Mind, they talk about it a lot, actually, that it's language in some situations like that is simply a technology of communication. People may speak, they don't
Right.
think of it as preference that they chose, and now they're pulling this whole baggage of that particular culture. They may have affinity for what's in their blood, but the language might be just simply an atmosphere, political climate of the time. And Ukraine is going through that, through reclaiming that and through understanding that. And Gogol, who in their right mind would ever think of Gogol as a Russian writer if they read any Gogol. You know, like
I have to actually read it.
like what's up, you know?
Uh-huh.
It's all built in the Ukrainian folklore. It's based blatantly straight out of there, and it's in that and Gogol's style was a lot more connected to Central European
Uh-huh.
Gothic novel, which was like thriving at that time. So he was complete anomaly in a world of Russian-speaking literature, which they all, that's what kind of
That was a draw.
basically kicked their ass,
Yeah.
I mean, all the
Kinda happening.
Pushkins and Dostoevskis, they worshipped Gogol, and specifically because of this factor. I mean, I think it was in Pushkin's diary that when he first met him, he said that this chachol is gonna like take us all down,
Kind
He
of
said
happening
that
now, too, right?
заткнет нас всех за пояс,
Really?
like put us all behind the belt,
Uh-huh.
So he wasn't wrong about that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So that's the first part of your band name.
Yeah, but well, the other part, actually, when you grew up in Ukraine and kind of like bordello was kind of a word for chaos and havoc. It wasn't. That's like the meaning of it that kind of we put
Spoke
in
to you,
because
yeah.
that kind of flamboyance and general kind of unruliness of situation. It's very much in a kind of punk rock spirit of the early days. Just something that's going to be, I wanted to call it vertep actually, but vertep was too unidentifiable for,
That's a eyeglass, really.
yes,
That's like
yes,
excuse
I
me?
saw it. Yes. Well, you know what it is
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
area of expertise.
yeah.
But vertep for English-speaking people, which is this, it's a kind of vaudeville, kind of rural folk vaudeville type of situation.
But it's taken on this sort of sacred, Christmassy meaning now, too.
Yeah, I mean, Gogol's father was a writer for local vertep.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
actually, Gogol developed a lot of his writings and
Okay.
plays out of his father's material. So that's how deeply Ukrainian it
I think a
was.
very like Chubai story you're talking about there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did some
Yeah, yeah.
homework
Yeah,
back
yeah,
then.
yeah.
So I wanted to call it Gogol vertep, but then it's just like
That's gonna be
these
too
words
hard.
are like you
Yeah,
need
they're-
at least one word that people can be just like
and
get
then,
into
and
swing
then you've got
of it,
the O's in there, the O sound.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and the first time, we put it on a poster. It kind of just took on wings,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got one more question, and then we're going to let you go because you're right off the plane. Alena, maybe two questions. Alena Sikorska asks, Вітаю з Днем Прапора.
Yes.
Today, Flag Day.
Yeah, today is a День прапора. Yes.
Євгена.
Вітаю всіх.
Євгене, що Україна має ще зробити, щоб Захід втрутився? So I guess what else should Ukraine do to further engage the West, or to engage the West? I'd say the West is already pretty engaged, but needs to be more engaged. But that's just me talking here.
I'd say it's pretty engaged, but we, there are several schools of thought about how to handle it from now on, because, those are who are very active on the front of keep engaging the world. They know that the world is, has its defense mechanisms, and eventually people start burning out in particular topics. So, for people in Ukraine and for us, burning out is not an option, And
That's part of that resilience that you were talking
yes,
about.
yes, it is. And at the same time, that's kind of what I mean by fine-tuning the situation, is that it's not, we have to invent this angle as we go along. We have to we have to stay sharp. You can't just talk about like basic Ukrainian traits and expect everybody just get behind us. It's also is going through sharpening and ripening and rebirth of a lot of values. and Ukrainian nation itself and Ukrainian diaspora. So to stay attuned, and as there's major transformation going on, like we're entering into like full-on digital, quantum, age.
Mm-hmm.
And Ukraine.
Gotta up our game. Keep upping our game.
Yeah, exactly. We are absolutely bound to keep upping our game, and it is happening. It is very happening, and that's like the best intention you can set. And the people who are also upping their game, they're the ones who are engaged with Ukraine. Like rudimentary kind of, people that are willing to stay in the past, they're not gonna latch on. They're not living in that thought operation mode.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a great thing that through this, unfortunately through such a crisis, but at the same time the result of it is a great frequency riser, for Ukrainian, like highest frequency, command kind of, people,
Just
to stay in touch with the high frequency of people of the world, because we are moving in the same direction. That's Russia is operating on obsolete values and on obsolete methods.
Yeah.
Everything
It's a matter of
about
their
propaganda, their war tactics, everything is just absolutely, it's so covered in rust, and here it's a different story. It's going through the roof.
Well, then to that, and this will be the final question that's coming in. Коли будуть нові концерти на підтримку України? What do you all have planned? Any more concerts to support Ukraine, or any projects you've got coming up?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course,
Of course.
we just
moving forward.
Yeah, we just did about 100 shows in starting May and until August, and you will hear that was across states and across Europe. We did the whole Europe clockwise in June and July, and our very last concert was in Ukraine, and you will hear about it tomorrow. Yes, we were out there in Ukraine actually with Vice news team, covering some events that are very kind of important. And also we're going out on tour in October and November. And in the meantime, it feels like an event after an event. If I'm not playing one of the bigger or smaller benefits, then I'm just there to support my friends, or just Ukrainian artists. So Oleg Skripka just the other day, right before we went to Ukraine, and he's coming back now. So
good. Okay. Well, then I hope, I don't know what your plans are for tomorrow, but in the middle of Central Park at Sheep's Meadow, we're going to have the world's largest Ukrainian flag that was just shipped to us from Ukraine. And we need at least 150 people to unfurl it across Sheep's Meadow. So it's going to be 5:30 New York time, Sheep's Meadow.
Okay.
Just a action where you come and you help unfurl this flag.
I'm looking forward to that.
Come on over, tell your friends, and then afterwards we'll just have kind of a potluck kind of picnic or whatever. But it's going to be sort of a takeover of Sheep's Meadow.
Yeah, you guys are always doing monumental things, and it's. It's true. It's so, to have that. I know that the Ukrainian heart is beating worldwide, but to see it visible, I think you're actually striking that. To make it visible and monumental, I think that's where your strength is, and I when I'm far away out there somewhere on a festival and I come across of it that this event is taking place in New York City, I'm like, yes, don't.
Because the creativity of people from Ukraine and the drive, that's what I'm talking about, someone made the largest flag and then someone else thought to see if they could share it with us, and then we were able to ship it with some of our shipments, and then someone picked it up, and someone's going to drive it in here, and it's all just individual people doing one concrete thing and then coming together to make something huge
Yeah,
happen.
it really does
So
bring
that's
people
how it
together.
works. That's
When
how
the
it
whole
works.
thing started, when the whole, you know, when the war started, I mean, I think that a lot of people get connected through Razom, and
Trying to connect.
it's really a fact. Yeah, I mean, some people that, you know, Liev Schreiber, I mean, we worked together, we've been
Yeah.
friends for years, so we just hopped on the phone
Good.
and started discussing the situation. But there is a lot of people that, you know, I met through you. So
Well,
and
we love
Maria,
it.
yeah.
We're glad you're part of the community. And that's how.
For sure.
And really, really happy. I mean, I know what it's like to travel and to get off a plane and to not know what time zone you're in. So I really, really appreciate you coming to our fancy Erasmus office. It's not fancy. That was sarcastic. І дуже дякую, що
Feels good.
поділився
Feels good here,
часом
yeah.
і ідеями. Well, this is your home. You're always welcome to come here. And
Like, I feel like I crashed here on a couch in the past.
well, this does belong.
Possibly on one of those, in one of those straight of the plane kind of.
Гостинність,
Twilight zones.
Українська гостинність, you know, we've got kava, we got whiteboards, you know.
Yes.
So,
Cheers.
дякую
Thank you.
дуже дякую.
Будьмо.
Hey,
З Днем Прапора, з Днем Незалежності. З Днем народження.
і з днем народження Жадана.
Exactly.
Дякую.
Сергію.
Па-па.
Папа.